All right, guys. Look, I owe all of you an apology, and not just the subscribers and the viewers, but I owe all of Self Help YouTube an apology. Okay, look, I'm not. I'm not happy to say that I completely missed the mark. So, if you're wondering what I'm talking about, a while ago, yeah, I would say about 2 months ago, it was one of my first videos. When I started this YouTube channel, I made a video called "Self Help is a Scam," and I just want to apologize, bro, because I think I completely missed the mark and I sounded like a douche, pretty much. I think that's the best, pardon my French, but that's the best way for me to say it. I think I came off very pretentious in, the way I approached that. And I just want to apologize because, if you have been tapping into most of my videos, you'd notice that recently I haven't been uploading as frequently as I was, and there's a reason why. Because I actually decided I was going to sit down and actually read the fucking books instead of just, yapping my mouth about them or, having problems with self-help. I decided to actually invest time into this and, do my research, do my homework before I was just going to go ahead and keep commenting on it. And now I just feel like a real like pretentious jerk for even like dissing on it because I just completely missed the mark, bro. A lot of my points in that video were just not valid. They had nothing to do with a lot of what I was trying to say, I guess, or what I, maybe meant to say, but I just completely missed it. And honestly, I've changed my point of view like drastically. And I think the book that I read that mostly changed my mind actually isn't really your traditional self help book, but it's more of a book that promotes self knowledge and kind of promotes like having more self awareness and awareness of your own mind and the unconscious mind and the shadow. And if you know that vocabulary, you already know that I'm talking about The Undiscovered Self by Carl Jung, and that shit changed my fucking life. And this book, it kind of promotes self knowledge and self awareness and the unconscious mind, and colliding, not colliding, but like collaborating your conscious and unconscious mind together in a way that like if you do that, like the self help makes sense. If you're able to do what he was trying to get people to do and discover your individuality, bro, like it is some insane shit, right? And I'm so sorry about dissing, bro. And I'll kind of give you guys the rundown. I won't spoil all of it in case you want to read it. But essentially, his main points in this book are that us as humans, we have like very little actual self knowledge, right? We don't actually know like the full extent of ourselves and our minds, even if we think we do, right? And his argument is that our perception of ourselves is a lot of the perceptions of other people, and the mass think, the group think, right? You guys hear Paulie Walnuts talk about that shit. He's the one who put me on to Carl Jung. And that group think and the way that people see you, and how you don't actually understand yourself because you're not tapped into your unconscious, right? There's things about you, there's feelings, there's motivations, whatever. There's so many maybe traumas. There's a bunch of things that you push in the back of your mind, and you like essentially force yourself to not think about consciously, right? Because you have your conscious mind, the one that's always thinking, the one that's making the decisions, and then you have the unconscious, right? These are things that are in your brain, but they're not things that are being like pushed through manually. There, it's just kind of like there. And the thing is with the unconscious mind and these things, right? These things that are in your brain, whether they're suppressed feelings, motivations, talents, creativity, like morals, they're not necessarily bad things. And that's a big point of his in the book, is that through social conditioning you've just been convinced that it's bad and that it should be repressed and pushed back into your mind. And I thought back on my life myself, and this made me reflect. Like full self-awareness, I started really thinking about myself and the things that I pushed back. And one of the biggest things that they challenge you to do that I actually started doing was doing dream journals. I started writing down my dreams, and I'm not gonna lie, like it felt kind of scary. It felt kind of spooky. I'm not gonna lie. Like this shit actually, it low key scared the fuck out of me doing this, because I started really like recounting my dreams, writing them down, and then I read through them after about a week, and I was like, what the fuck? Like a lot of the content in my dreams is that unconscious shit. And it's that shit that I don't think about normally, but then it just comes to me, right? When I'm, unconscious. And I'm like, yo, what the fuck? Because, normally, just like every other normie, like I like to wake up and scroll, bro. Like we all like to wake up and scroll some TikTok, some Instagram. We like to open our DMs, you know what I mean? We're just not ready for the day, bro. We just woke up, right? We're trying to stimulate that brain before we actually have to get up and do shit, go to work, and like I get it, bro. Like I have that conditioning in my brain still, even though I'm trying to get off that. Like I would be lying if I didn't say that. There are some mornings where I just want to wake up and fucking, oh my god, just scroll TikTok and not have to worry about anything. But the reality is I started waking up, and instead of scrolling, I would immediately write down what was in my dreams and what I could remember. Obviously, like sometimes like you're not gonna remember everything, right? That just happens. But if you can just keep writing down the key details and the things that you remember to the best of your memory, like, dude, like this shit will teach you so much about yourself. And where I'm going with this is that if I wouldn't have just put a fucking pin in it and just been like, okay, I'll actually invest into self-help, self-knowledge, and, growing my mind and understanding myself even more to get better. Like, I probably wouldn't be saying all this today. And just doing that alone, and there's obviously more steps to it. You don't just dream journal, but essentially, like, what I'm saying is like, I thought this shit was a scam, and I thought that it was just a bunch of bullshit, and I'm like, just, just don't be a fucking dummy and you can figure shit out. No, bro, like, genuinely, like, a lot of this shit is teaching me things about myself that I didn't know before. And like, honestly, like, I could say personally, and I could probably speak for a lot of people, like, it's kind of scary, and it's kind of almost like, I would say, threatening to yourself to like really deep dive into your own mind like that, right? Because a lot of us, we spend a lot of our time just like trying to suppress the things in our mind because we don't want to fucking deal with it. And I also think that it's worth noting that Carl Jung does emphasize very heavily in this book that people are just trying to alleviate their own responsibilities by being part of that group think and that mass mindedness, right? Following these creeds. And the whole thing is that like it's so much easier to strip the individualism of somebody, right? To just strip your own individuality, because whether it's your beliefs or the things you do or when something's wrong or whatever, it's easier for the group to take responsibility, right? It's easier for, let's just say like your group leader to take the fall instead of you having to have that own individual responsibility for things. And there's so many different examples as to where this could apply. And let's just say you're for the sake of it, right? I'll give you an example. Let's just say you're an employee at Target, right? And you're selling blankets, I guess, for $4,000 a piece. And on the blankets packaging, in very small, tiny little letters, it says that there's a $1,000 fee if you don't pay with cash, I guess. I don't know. I'm just making shit up off the dome. But essentially, you have two choices, right? You could speak up and be like, yo, this is fraud. This is fucked up. And then you could potentially, lose favor with the company and your job and whatever, blah, blah, blah. Or your other option is to just go with it. Just be like, let the company, make it the company's responsibility, right? Just be like, I'm just going to turn my eye, and, you can sleep peacefully at night and be like, well, I mean, I didn't do it, so that's fine. I'm a good person, right? It's essentially just turning a blind eye, right? And that's essentially what happens when you fall into that group think. Even though that was a really shitty example, I guess, or I tried the best I could. But you get what I'm saying, right? And yeah, that's all I'm saying, is that essentially people will fall into these groups to alleviate responsibility. And, it's not just, to keep your status or whatever. It's also to help kind of just like not have to deal with mental strain of navigating through life, right? You don't have to deal with being, disagreed with. You don't have to deal with being hated on, right? Because, if you just follow with everybody else, you're another good egg. You're the perfect guy. There's nothing wrong with you. And essentially, like, these masses and these groups, they attempt to just keep you from having that individuality and being yourself, and that keeps you from growing, in all honesty. And the whole harm in this, I guess I should say, is that you're basically losing yourself, right? You just get empty inside because you're conforming and putting on a mask, which is also dangerous. You know, everybody knows that like when you walk around with a mask on, like people don't actually, they don't know you. They don't have anything to do with you, the real you. They don't have a clue as to what you're actually about, right? And you know that'll make everything feel like a lie and just feel false. And eventually, you know, if it catches up to you, you know you're gonna feel extremely empty inside, and you're gonna feel like nothing, and you're also gonna be extremely damaged and hurt, in the sense of you know feeling more alienated and alone than you would have in the first place just being yourself. You know, I can recall, you know, many times in my life where I was just a complete fraud just to alleviate responsibility, right? You know, I had this friend group in college where essentially like I just conformed to the way they talked, spoke, joked around. I did things that they like to do that I didn't necessarily like to do, you know, just so I could get some approval and have somewhere to belong and not have to feel full responsibility for things, right? And that's exactly what Carl Jung was warning against, right? It is easier for me to just do things with those people, and if you know something went wrong, it was the group's fault. It wasn't just my fault. But if I myself was to make a decision that maybe you know came back poorly, it would all fall on me, and that would just be more you know drastic measures on my punishment. And I guess I'm trying my best to explain it. It's kind of a lot to ingest, but just bear with me. And what he calls the unconscious mind is what he kind of coined. He kind of coined the name the shadow. That's what he calls your unconscious mind. And these are things that are suppressed, repressed, pulled back, things that you don't reveal about yourself in, you know, the masses, right? The things you don't pull out in front of people because it could be looked down upon or seen as unethical or just damaging to society, whatever it is. And like I said previously, a lot of things that you push into your unconscious mind, I did want to note on this, like they're not necessarily bad things, right? Let's just say that you had this, you know, crazy, you know, talent for art, but your parents wanted you to be a rocket scientist. So they're like, oh, that's useless as fuck. Like, you shouldn't be a fucking painter, bro. Like, what are you, gay? You know what I'm saying? Like, they're just like, oh, that's not a good career option, okay? And so you push that back, right? And you go to be a rocket scientist, but you know, internally you're just damaging yourself because you're not exploring on that and you're conforming to what they think, and it just kind of you don't feel that sense of wholeness in your mind anymore. And I had this one friend. Okay, this is a good example. I had a friend who I grew up with who I knew was like, you know, just deep down nerdy, bro. Like, right? Like he was just into his, you know, nerdy little shit, and like he was just into things that were, you know, kind of frowned upon about or like by the people around him, like his family and other friends and everything. And so he suppressed these things, right? He didn't explore these things about him that he was actually genuinely interested in. And when we got older, I noticed that he just became a certified fucking hater, bro. Like a straight douchebag, bro. Like this guy, you know, I got all the love for him, but you know, I'm not gonna name him or anything. I'm not gonna be a dick. But I will say that like when we got older, bro, like you guys all know you have that one friend who's just a hater, bro. Every time he sees somebody different than him or not like him or something, he just starts talking shit, right? And the thing is, what the moral of the story here is that he pushed all those things about him into his unconscious, that now when he sees people who are actually into the things that he's into, or you know, he was told by the people around him that there's certain things that weren't acceptable, now he projects, right? Because secretly I know that he deep down wants to be that. He wants to explore that shit himself, but he can't. And so essentially it just causes him to be hateful towards it, even though he's harboring those same things secretly. You know, and it's funny, right? Because I look at him and I'm like, you know, we used to be kids just ripping the jewel, fucking playing Fortnite or whatever, Call of Duty, like just, you know, being fun and shit. And then somewhere along the way, like, I feel like he got suppressed so bad that, like, now it's completely fucked his mind over because these things, now I guarantee you that he doesn't even really think about it because it's been so instilled in him by groupthink. And now I see his friends who he's friends with now, and it's like they're the same way. And they're just doing more damage to him than good because he's still suppressing these things that he actually might be interested in. And he's just taking on an entire persona. Like, he's a different kid than the one that I knew. And that's a good example of somebody who's just been overtaken by their shadow. And I know that my next video, I'm going to go more into all of this. I just wanted to kind of like just highlight that I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot. And there's just so much to unpack in this case. Not only, I want to share things that I've learned about myself and things that I've learned about society because, in that book, he does emphasize a lot about how society has been, completely impacted and just negatively and been drawn into groupthink and how it's just a lot. Okay, like there's so much to it, and I know my next video is definitely gonna be more on the effect that groupthink and mass-mindedness has on and creeds, like that effect that it has on society. And a good example of that is things like TikTok and social media. So I'm definitely going to dive deep into that because I've had a lot to say about that. And I think now that I'm more educated, I think I could really touch on that topic. But yeah, I think this video, I'm probably going to end it here because I have a lot more to say, but I don't have enough gameplay. So there will be a part 2 within the next day or two. I promise. I'm not going to leave you guys hanging. But I do want to say, like, again, like, I'm sorry for being so pretentious and just kind of like dumb. And I know that in this video I didn't even unpack like the meat and potatoes of this subject. Like, I gave you guys like a brief review of the things that I've learned and the things that you guys should probably look into as well. But I will definitely try to do more thorough investigation on this and a more thorough review and explanation because this is like some really mind-opening shit. And if I'm gonna help people with self-help and all that, like I really want to know my facts, do my homework, right? I really want to be I want to be helpful. And even though this video was semi-vague, I hope that kind of helped give you guys maybe a little more interest in the unconscious mind and your self-knowledge and the things, maybe even that book. I know this was kind of like half book review. Shout out Carl Jung, by the way. I'll link the book in the description because I really want you guys to check that out, like for real, if you're interested, right? But that's probably all I'm gonna do for today. I appreciate you guys tapping in. I'm really gonna pump this next one out in the next day or two. I already got all my notes ready for the next video, but this one was third apology, a third book review, and a third what I actually learned. So I'll be sharing more of what I learned in the next one. And I appreciate you guys as always. I've seen the comments and the subscribers. I love y'all so much. Thank you and peace.